Thank you, Madam Speaker. Back when this national nightmare began, Speaker Pelosi laid bare her intentions and purely partisan agenda. She told her caucus that they needed to strike while the iron is hot. This was always an exercise in raw partisan politics. Contrary to the warnings of our founders, and over the last month, we saw the justification for running the fastest, thinnest, and weakest impeachment in American history crumble. Instead of sending the articles of impeachment to the Senate for trial, Speaker Pelosi held them hostage in a failed play to gain leverage that she did not and would never have. In terms of concessions, she got nothing. No control, no moral victories. In other words, another failed strategy. After a month of counterproductive and harmful delays, I have three questions for my friends on the other side of the aisle, the Democrats. What happened to impeachment being urgent? What happened to Congress being on the clock? What happened to saying the House would be derelict in our duty if we did not act immediately? These were all the assertions Democrats made over the past several months. I guess it turns out none of them are true. These delay tactics were self-serving, hypocritical, and discrediting. But they made an important admission. Some might even call it a concession. You proved a very big point. Democrats do not even believe their case was robust enough to win in a trial. Even the Speaker's allies admit the delays undermined their case. Some has gone as far as describing it as a failed strategy. These are those who are closest to her. Senator Feinstein, the senior Democrat from our state of California and the hometown senator of the Speaker, said, "The longer it goes on, the less urgent it becomes." And Chairman Adam Smith, a confidant of the Speaker, said it was time to transmit the articles to the Senate. Before these statements were made last week, before the Senate Speaker relented, they are significant because they were public and they were honest. I'm disappointed these individuals did not have the courage to stand by their initial comments. If impeachment was truly as urgent as Democrats claimed, the majority should not have waited for the Speaker to choose a political convenient time. Anyone could have recognized this ploy would not work. The House and the Senate are different institutions, and at this point in time, controlled by different parties. As James Madison wrote in the Federalist Papers, the purpose of bicameralism is to guard against the dangers of encroachment and to stop toxic resolutions from taking effect. We saw separation of powers prevail against an abuse of power, just as the Constitution intends. The idea of withholding a sloppy impeachment case to force the Senate to change its rules is constitutionally and politically unheard of. Frankly, it's just ridiculous. In Article 1, Section 5, the Constitution clearly states, each House may determine the roles of its proceedings. It doesn't say the House may determine the roles of proceedings in the Senate. If anything, the Speaker's actions have only further persuaded members of the Senate that the evidence of impeachment was neither thorough nor satisfactory. But you know what? Let's be honest. This was never about persuasion. It was never about the rule of law. It was what Alexander Hamilton warned us, that one party would get control. And just because of the animosity would demean the process of impeachment. And by selecting these particular batch of managers, the Speaker has further proven she's not interested in winning the minds, the hearts, or even following the Constitution. Let's take a look at the first three names Speaker Pelosi announced in her anticipated announcement earlier today. Chairman Schiff, a man who has already taken on the role of judge, jury, and fact witness throughout the entire House impeachment process. Chairman Nadler, someone who campaigned for the chairmanship of the Judiciary Committee that's responsible for impeachment beginning as far back as December 2017, before you were even in the majority, on the notion that he would be the best person to lead the charge on potential impeachment against the president. You see, you get a chairmanship by your conference voting for you. You campaign for it. You put your best ideas out there of why you should be the chairman. In 2017, that was the campaign. Congressman Hakeem Jeffries, a member who almost 2 years to this date voted in support of impeachment. You know, that was more than a year before the Ukraine call even took place. Those are just some of the managers. If you think about the members, there's people who were, on the day they were sworn in to this body, told those who supported him the greatest that they were going to impeach him. As I've said in the past, there's an issue with fairness. But instead of looking to the Senate, Speaker Pelosi should be looking within her own caucus. From the beginning, this investigation was marred by selective leaks to the media, a completely predetermined process. Yes, we've been through impeachment before, but it was much different. We believed in the rule of law back then, that we would face our accuser, that you could cross-examine, that the minority could actually ask for witnesses. The day that impeachment was asked to come forward, I sent a letter to the Speaker, laying out 10 items, none that were made up. You know what they were? The fair process we've always used in the past. The answer was no. Because they've been working on this for 2.5 years, they could not let fairness determine the outcome. Any other prosecutor would be disbarred for such blatant bias, especially if that prosecutor was a fact witness in the case. The reason for this impeachment is the same reason it's taken Democrats 30 days to send the articles to the Senate. Just spite. They wanted to stain the president's record without giving him a fair chance to clear his name. Last year, we saw House Democrats invert the burden of proof during their fair investigation. For every American watching, take, for instance, if this was your government, if you switched the burden of proof on you. We have a congressman, Max Rose, characterized it this way, this new freshman of the majority. The president says he's innocent, so all we're saying is prove it. God forbid government accuses you of something as an average American to say you have to prove it. We just switched a fundamental belief as an American. But only in this House do we do that. This guilty and proven innocent mentality was an admission that impeachment was not about upholding justice or protecting the rule of law. Now Democrats have invented an even more destructive standard. You're guilty because they say so. Our founders feared this day. Alexander Hamilton warned us of this day. I had hoped this day would not come. I would hope those who uphold the Constitution would believe in the rule of law instead of the spite of the dislike of an individual. Like the kangaroo courts on college campuses, or an accusation is enough for a conviction. Even as early as just last Sunday in an interview, Speaker Pelosi made that point very clear to all of us. Asked what a Senate acquittal would mean, she said it didn't matter. The president is impeached forever. Is that what this is all about? Just a personality. Just an abuse of power that you have within a house that we all feared this country would never do. You could almost see on the Speaker's smile as she spoke about this new standard, how incredibly solemn she was. Madam Speaker, when Americans look back on this sad saga, they will see a rigged process that forever damaged the remedy of impeachment. Speaker Pelosi got nothing from the Senate, but the American people got worse than nothing. They got stuck with the bill for a costly, never-ending investigation. The old saying that you get what you pay for does not apply here. Congress wasted time and millions of dollars on partisan impeachment. In return, taxpayers get nothing. Democrats' misaligned priorities have cost the people solutions that could have improved the quality of their life. There's no greater contrast than what we are doing right here today than what is happening at Pennsylvania Avenue. The president sitting down with another country of a leader and signing a trade agreement. Something people said we could never get done. To make this country stronger, to make America the next century ours. But what are we doing here? We are doing what this majority has worked their entire time for. Before they were even sworn in, they campaigned for the position of chairman, for this moment, for this time, for the millions of dollars that are spent, so they could say the president is impeached. That's a lofty history. Those are lofty goals that you now have authored more subpoenas than you created laws. But thank God we got a president in the White House that does not sit back. Yes, he got the United States, Mexico, Canada trade agreement, our top two traders. He's sitting with a trade agreement with China today, but think about how much stronger his hand would have been had that agreement taken place earlier when he got it. No, it was held. Why? Because we were impeaching. That's an amazing agenda, but you promised people you would do it. This is not a moment this body should be proud of. If, as Speaker Pelosi likes to say, impeachment is a national civics lesson, let's use this blunder as a teachable moment. I'll make this promise to the American public, because the day will come that the majority will switch. We will uphold the Constitution. We will listen to the words of Alexander Hamilton. And just because somebody else is in an office that we may not like, we will not change the rule of law. We'll not accuse them of breaking it and say they have to prove it. We believe America is more than a country. That America is an idea of the straightness that we, yes, would make students in Iran rise up for the freedom of what they know America to be. That the rule of law was so powerful. This is a moment and a civic lesson that we should learn. This is a moment that will teach our grandchildren that, yes, more than 200 years ago, the founders crafted an amazing country, but they warned us what abuse of power would look like. The sad part is we're witnessing it. What a contrast in a day and time. Moving forward, we must not redo these same mistakes in Congress. And my promise to you, if power was to change, the rule of law would come back. We'd have an agenda focused on people, not on politics. We'd have a voice that you're innocent until proven guilty. We would not abuse our power just for the sheer shake of politics to say you're impeached forever because I dislike you. We are better than this. It's a sad day. But the great thing about America, it will all change because the people have the voice. I yield back.